Da 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 do post. Okay. Hello. I'm John Johnson. I am the director of many, many ridiculous movies. One of which, what this is about, is a movie coming up called House of Horrors, where I'm doing a monster mashup of possible 10 monsters all together in one movie, but it might not end up being 10, but it might be 10. But right now, one of the ones that's definitely in it is Frankenstein's monster, who we are going to refer to as Frankenstein for the rest of this video, because in my film, he will take in the name of his father and be called Frankenstein, and so that will finally just be done with, and the argument will be over, at least for our film. With me is Royce Hobson.
Hola.
Now, Royce, tell him why you being on this Frankenstein show is you're not just some guy.
Well, I don't even know how I got here, first off. Yeah, I do. No.
He drove me.
Yeah. I was his ride. No, really, I have no affiliation with Frankenstein films as far as love and knowledge that reaches beyond Abbott and Costello and Young Frankenstein. But during one of the last shows that, well, one of the previous shows you were doing earlier,
Is Royce Hobson? Now, Roy.
I'm sorry, there's a delay.
There is a delay.
There's a delay.
There is a delay. We are in the future.
Oh.
The lottery, winning lottery.
The future is now. Okay. During one of the previous shows, there was you brought up the fact that that there was during my childhood and growing up, I was under the impression that in relationship with my family, it was Valerie Hobson who was in the original Bride of Frankenstein. Since then, I've been doing some research, and what I've come across is that Valerie was born in Ireland in 1917. During my research, I have found that the Hobsons on my father's side were, in fact, in Ireland in the early 1900s. Now, obviously, this does not confirm, but it's looking better and better. And there's only so much I can do without going into, I guess, what, things like Ancestry.com, maybe, possibly
Right.
things like that.
So there's a possible chance that you are related to Valerie Hobson from
Yes.
Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And then also, who will be yelling at me from the other side is Alyssa Lauer. She is going to be handling your comments. And speaking of your, well, you got to come. Yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
Get away. All right, and then and if you want to comment, the only place we're going to be checking them this show is going to be in the YouTube comments of this video, which Alyssa will be checking regularly for your comments. We've got some that we're going to bring in already from some stuff we did some post earlier to try to get some material to last for this hour. But House of Horrors is a film I'm planning on making in 2015. I'm doing a research study on each monster from films, books, games, comic books, anything and everything I could find. I'm researching, studying to see what everybody else has done across the spectrum, so that when I approach it, I'm treating the fans with respect, the original material with respect, and telling something new and not too repetitive. So that's kind of the thing, and I've obviously just got started. I do these live videos every few movies, but this is our final one. This was to be the one that's on the site, which will probably be video one on the site, which is me summing up my experience with Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. So let's see. To start it off, we have a video question, which will take me 1 second. Royce, be funny.
Oh, okay. There was a time in the 80s.
Ooh, Royce. Royce, we
I really
have a
don't
loading
remember
screen.
the 80s too much. There was the 90s.
We're loading. We're loading.
I've just recently quit drinking, so it's kind of like being born again. And I'm seeing the world very differently.
Hi
All right,
guys,
here we
my
are.
name's Steve, and my question was about the iconography of the monsters. You were talking about how they're basically Halloween masks. Everybody's familiar with them a certain way. And if you're going to do this set in modern times with these characters, are they going to be recognizably what we expect them to look like? Because on the one hand, it's really hard to tell you're looking at Dracula if he's not dressed like what everyone thinks Dracula would be dressed like, you know, with the cape, the tuxedo, etc. On the other hand, it really doesn't make any sense for him to dress that way. So it's kind of a toss-up, because like I say, when you were talking about House of Frankenstein '97, and in that what was it, TV movie, everyone was very modern. I mean, the vampire was, I don't even think it was Dracula, he was a vampire, but I mean, you wouldn't know he was Dracula even if he had been, because he just looked like a guy. Speaking of which, since we're on the subject, Dracula has usually been portrayed with an accent, thanks to Bela Lugosi. And so are you going to have Dracula talking like that, or will he just sound normal? Because in the book, he learned to speak English with an English accent, so no one would know he was foreign. That was one of the reasons he had Harker there as part of the plot, so that he could learn to talk and blend in. So that's something Dracula likes to do. He likes to blend in wherever he goes, so that people don't, single him out. It makes him less memorable, I guess. The other thing is the Frankenstein's monster spoke French. I mean, the book was written in English, obviously, but these characters are all theoretically speaking French. Is he going to have a French accent or anything like that, or are you just not going to worry about that? I mean, that could kind of go either way. And the last thing I wanted to say is that my recommendation for another monster would be the Phantom of the Opera, because like the other characters you talk about, he does have a pop culture version that is really not correct for the character. It's thanks to the musical and everything, he's sort of this sad romantic figure, and while that is not entirely inaccurate, really he was just an obsessed psychopath that had a tendency to go around killing people. So you have this disfigured madman who goes on killing sprees basically anytime he doesn't get what he wants. That sounds like a pretty scary guy. I wouldn't want to have to deal with him. And I also think he's got one of the coolest, weapons. Everybody's got their iconic thing. The modern horror monsters, like Jason has the machete and Freddy has the glove and what have you. Whereas the Phantom, he had that this lasso called the Punjab lasso. Apparently, he just would just toss it out and immediately snap your neck. The only way people could even walk around when looking for him was to keep their hands up like this, just so he couldn't, get them. So I just think that would be visually kind of cool, because I don't think it's ever been used in any adaptation. I mean, they might show him strangling people. They don't show him doing it quite that way. I think that would be a really cool addition, because I mean, he would be very scary, and it's just a frightening and very quick way to kill somebody off. I think it would look cool in a movie. Thanks for your time.
All right, well, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steven. All right, so he had a series of questions. First off, what would the monsters look like? I mean, we obviously, because of Universal, you can't make them look too much like the Universal monsters, because you can get in trouble for that. But we are going to make them to where if you're just looking at them in a lineup, you would know which one's which, obviously. So we'll have something very close to that. And costume-wise, I mean, obviously, I found a way to get Dracula in a cape, but obviously he wouldn't be wearing a cape normally, because they've adapted, and the ones that are immortal would have lost their accents by now. Because you're right, in the book Dracula, Harker was trying to get Dracula to speak common, and that was part of his reasoning for keeping Harker as long as he did, other than just the tortures and plans he had for him, was also to learn how to speak common so that he could infiltrate into London better. without standing out so much with his accent, so that if people saw him, they wouldn't recognize and be familiar with, oh, that was that guy. Like he would blend in more like a chameleon. So yeah, the accents will be addressed. I've got a whole plan for that. Costumes will be addressed. And what was the third question?
Well, it was first the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, Phantom.
Bring
Right now there's no plans to bring Phantom in. However, I am a very big fan of the book. That being that, like, one of the biggest misconceptions of Dracula and Phantom of the Opera is that Phantom of the Opera slept in a coffin and Dracula slept in a crate full of dirt. But when the movies came out, they put all the vampires in the coffin, but it was actually the Phantom of the Opera that slept in a coffin. I am a big fan of Phantom of the Opera. That might be something I approach separately, mainly because it's modern and he wasn't immortal. So he's a hard one to fit in, but I am a big fan, and you never know. Things could change. I'm only dealing with Monster 1 right now, and I'm really starting to get a feel for where the story is going to go and what kind of story I want to tell. And that will adapt, because I mean, this process will probably take months. I'll be doing this and researching all these movies and talking with you guys about it and your ideas. So yeah, it's a big process that we're going through. All right, well,
yeah, and a couple other points that he had up, which one was iconically weapon choice, as far as which I think most of these monsters are really just hands on.
Yeah, they're before that the slasher thing had come in, but yeah, it is a cool idea if you do Phantom to work in the whip. That's definitely a cool thing that you don't see a whole lot of. I did a movie called Grimmel where the Jester carried a bullwhip, just because I thought it was different and kind of fun. He had like a flail and a bullwhip, just because I think I had seen something in like a circus film, and so I kind of related it with that, I guess. But that is a cool idea. Any comments on YouTube, or no one's found us? We've got 4 viewers I see at this moment, and we are probably one of them. But yeah, we'll see how this went down to 3. So I should have mentioned it.
I'm sorry, I logged out.
Back to 4. You log back in. You're back in. All right.
I couldn't leave you. All right,
Can't quit you.
Another thing that they said, and this is actually raises a question with me. He was talking about the French origins of Frankenstein. Would you actually base, factually, would you have your origins of Frankenstein and the monster start in France, or
well, without giving too much away, everything in the books I'm going to consider to be factual to the creature, not the movies, the books, and there's a reason for that. And the books they don't predate the monsters. The monsters predate the books. But with Frankenstein, where the book ended is where I'm going to pick up his story, and I'm going to kind of do that with all the characters that I'm basing strictly like on a novel work. Wherever the book left off, I will explain what happened at the end of the book to where they are now. And so that will come in. With being French, I don't know. I mean, all of it could have taken. I mean, obviously, it did take place in France until eventually it ends up in the Arctic. But I will probably be picking up the story in the Arctic versus in Baguette Land. And let's see. We got so much. We've got one from the Peanut Gallery, which is some of the Darkstone actors and friends that I started on a Voxer chat to ask some questions. These will probably all be trite and offensive, but Voxer is having problems at the moment, so we're loading. So, da 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 da. Da, 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 da. Well, while that's loading, I went through 10 films. Now, I've seen, obviously, a ton more. Hang on. All right. So the first question comes from Jared Kearney. Which monster has the biggest penis, and do we have specific measurements?
Well, Frankenstein's would be borrowed, right?
Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
the penis was
Everything was
chosen.
big about
yeah.
him.
He was oversized.
Yeah.
Because it was easier to do the sewing.
Yeah, and you had to make up with the veins. You know, it had to have large veins and musculature to
I wouldn't say Dracula. The Mummy probably just has a little shriveled.
dry.
Dust.
Yeah. It could be the Gill Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon. He could also
see him
like
as a
a
wand
red
man.
rocket that
Yeah.
might come out, like, or it could be a tentacle. So if he's got a tentacle dick, he would be the longest. But I'm sure the girth is going to go to Frank.
It's got to be Frankie.
It's going to be to
prove,
Frank.
You can't prove anything with the Invisible Man because.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's for the blind only.
And Hyde is supposed to get big too.
Oh.
His bone
Yeah,
structure is supposed to change, but I think it wasn't dramatically different. In the book, it was just partially different.
But Jekyll, I mean Dr. Jekyll, I mean that's kind of like juicing. So in my mind, I think as he's juicing, it's just like
He's
our
disqualified.
It's our modern steroids.
And our
The
Wolfman
shrinkage.
could have a red rocket as well.
He gets bigger.
Right now, we're gonna say Frank with Gillman as a wild card.
Yeah.
There must be some porn monster movies out there.
I'm sure that. Oh, that
I'm
would
looking.
porn monster
Maybe
Hold
movies.
tight, I'm looking.
I'm sure that those
Yeah.
exist.
I'm looking.
It's just don't. All right, so of the movies that I did, I didn't want. I'm watching all the Universal films because those are the ones that are influencing this film the most. But then I also chose whatever the newest release was when I was doing my studies, more of something from kind of every decade if I can. So with the Universal films, I did the 4 because anything that got to a versus, I want to do in a separate chapter, a separate study, and everything that's 3 monsters or more is a monster mashup, so I do that later. So I did Frankenstein. I skipped Bride because you found stuff.
I found.
So I'm good. I skipped Bride because I'm going to do Bride as her own study. So I did Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, which is part 3, and Ghost of Frankenstein, so far as the Universal movies are concerned. House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein are monster mashups. I will do those later. And Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein is also a monster mashup, which I will do later. So I did those 3, and of those 3, my favorite one is Son. Mainly because Bela Lugosi as Igor, which is the first time Igor is ever on screen, was Felix in the original film. And I can't remember the guy in the second one. There was a guy in the second one too. He had a different name. Or I think it might have been even played by the same actor, but I think it was a different guy.
Well, when was Igor actually introduced?
In the third film.
Third film?
Son
That's the only time he was actually...
Yeah, he's in 3 and 4, but then that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's actually played by Bela Lugosi, which was really cool. And he did such a phenomenal job as Igor. And actually, if you really watch Son of Frankenstein, you can see that young Frankenstein was really parroting Son over all the other films. They were even used the storyline of the... well, actually, if you kind of think about it, they talk... The son of Frankenstein is the son who shows up in town and follows his father's experiments. And he has a son. And I believe in Young Frankenstein, they say it was his grandfather that was Frankenstein. So if you keep that, Young Frankenstein is actually kind of a sequel to the series because you actually see Gene Wilder's character in Son of Frankenstein as a little redheaded boy. So in a way, I think they were really connecting it to Son of Frankenstein. Ghost of Frankenstein was okay. It was decent. They obviously changed the game up a lot because there was no video rental. So, continuity would change constantly because people would forget stuff and they wouldn't think that people would remember anyway. So when they made the sequels, you usually if you go want to see the new Harry Potter movie, they might watch all the Harry Potter movies before you go see the new Harry Potter movie. And they couldn't do that. We have an official black cat over here.
I have a black pussy on my lap while I'm looking at some Frankenstein porn. This is awesome.
Stay away from him at
The peanut
Needless to
gallery.
say, my night is planned.
Right. We have a whole thing. All right. So of those films, really like Son. I love the sets. The acting was really, really strong. I believe it was the final Boris Karloff Frankenstein. I think after that, it was, Bela Lugosi eventually played him. and Lon Chaney Jr. Played it, which I think Lon Chaney Jr. did Ghost. Yeah, because Bela Lugosi is yeah. So it was Lon Chaney Jr. did Ghost of Frankenstein. So that was that. Those were those. So that's 3 in my 10 features. What was another feature?
You have well, of course you have Unbound. But
that was Frankenstein Unbound. Roger Corman.
Yep.
It's where Raul Julia played the doctor. And the monster, I think I didn't recognize the monster, but John Hurt. It's just very much sci-fi, where someone travels back in time and meets Mary Shelley and realizes that all this is real, and she's actually writing about incidents that she witnessed, which is kind of what the book does anyway. That was a cool film. It was definitely a different take. The monster was much more sinister, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards. I think a lot of times they make the monster sympathetic, because he does start off very sympathetic. He's childlike, he's hurt, he's wounded, he's abandoned, but people kind of forget he kills a little boy and then murders everyone else in a tantrum, and essentially causing, Victor to go. So I'm thinking that hundreds of years later, this is not a nice creature, and is probably the biggest and the strongest of the monsters, and is not somebody you want to meet in a dark alley, because he just hates mankind. You are getting needed.
Yep.
Is that what that's how you say it?
Needed. I'm bleeding.
Yeah. He's
hello.
Such pleasures to show you. All right. What's another movie on the study?
Well, you have. All right. Let's get this one out of the way, because it's the newest in the pop culture of I, Frankenstein.
Oh yes, I
haven't seen it.
Frankenstein versus gargoyles. I have to watch whatever the newest releases that I can find, or the top 2 releases. So I, Frankenstein was the most popular new release when I was doing the studies. And so I watched it, and I love the guys who made the movie. I really enjoyed Underworld, especially the 3rd one. That was my favorite of the bunch. But they did werewolves and vampires, and so they were doing another Universal monster. So they did Frankenstein as. It's weird to me when they make Frankenstein just have some scars and therefore he's a monster. I think he has to really look like a monster. I mean, in the book, people would see him and then immediately try to kill him or run in fear. And so when you get some guy who looks kind of attractive, but he's got this scar and he's like, I'm a monster, it doesn't really work for me, because no one, I've seen some scarred people, and yes, we attack them with canes. But you're not just because somebody has a scar, you don't torture and murder them.
Hey, those charges were dropped.
Yeah, it was all cleared up.
Never happened.
So it's a little weird how they do that in the newer versions of the movie. And I think Frankenstein's monster should be a monster. He should look like, if you saw him, you're like, oh shit, that looks terrible.
And to bring it up, in case people don't know this, you actually introduced me to this. And I'm very angry that nothing came of it. Just speaking of scarred up Frankenstein, Jerry O'Connell played Frankenstein in Mockingbird Lane.
Mockingbird Lane was a show that was going to get launched. They shot a pilot.
So good. That
was really good. It was a monster mashup, obviously a remake of the Munsters, but a very dark remake of the Munsters, where I think Eddie Izzard played the grandpa who literally killed, 2 people?
Yeah,
in the first episode,
teaching Eddie
and drinking the blood from the heart of some guy, it was amazing. And if you go on Hulu and you can find it, if it's still out there, Mockingbird Lane. That's just a pilot. I think it was produced by Bryan Singer. Amazing.
Yeah,
I really wish this show had gotten picked up. That was very cool.
So let's get some voices on this. Maybe with enough clout, we can possibly have it.
We have 5 viewers. If any of you
5, spread the word.
Spread the word. But also, if you comment on YouTube, have we had anything?
No.
All right, comment on YouTube, and then we'll get your comments. We'll be able to talk about them if you want to do something live. All right, before we get back into more movies,
sure.
Let's one of these other questions we got here.
Well, the one was from Stephen Phillips, which he did the video thing. So it
was the same thing?
Same thing, and then he says he's here because of Alucard. Was the only thing he did.
Oh, yeah. I made I've been a fan of monster novels more. I mean, of course, I love monster movies, but I've made a 4-hour epic called Alucard, which was a retelling of Dracula verbatim, basically, because Dracula, the character, is in the Guinness World Book of Records. It's been in more films than Santa Claus and Jesus. Like there's no other fictional character, or not just fictional, but there's no character at all that has been in more movies than Dracula. He's the most used character, but no one ever did the story. No one ever did the book. And in fact, it was very frustrating because Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is what they called it, which is where all the confusion came from, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, turned it into this kind of like love story and this like drama, which wasn't the book at all. But that's what everyone thinks it is because they called it Bram Stoker's Dracula. And so everyone thinks that that's a literary thing. However, it is one of the closer ones to the book. They changed it dramatically from the character source of what Dracula is. Like Dracula does not bite Mina because he's in love with her or had a previous life with her or is infatuated with her. In the book, he bites Mina because Van Helsing and Harker fucked up his house. That is the reason why he attacks Mina, is they literally break his house down in Carfax Abbey, and he's furious about it. That is it. Like I don't even want to. But that's so I made that movie, and so thank you guys who are fans of that film, because it was very low budget, and I was very ambitious with it, and but yeah, thank you guys for sticking out for that, and this is me kind of getting to do something similar, but on a grand scale, which is amazing.
And Mockingbird Lane is on, so you can.
Oh, you can go to Hulu. It's still up on Hulu.
I didn't look on Hulu. I just Googled it.
Oh.
And it had different things you could watch at tv.com.
Oh, tv.com. Okay, great. So you can go find it. It's really worth watching. It's very, very cool, but it's heartbreaking because it would have made an amazing show.
Yeah.
If they kept it as dark as the first episode. All right. What's another movie that I reviewed or not reviewed, but I put it in my studies?
All right. Well, before I listen to a movie, I'm curious about this. You have on your studies the 1955 radio drama of Frankenstein. Were you actually able to listen to that?
I did.
You did.
Those are the additionals. In opposed to, I do 10 movies, and then I do anything I could kind of get my hands on. And there was a 1955 radio drama, I believe, in the UK of Frankenstein, but it was a very condensed version, kind of like a play version, where it really kind of focused on, well, it was a retelling pretty much for the most part, but it was the building of the monster was more of a debate between his friend of like, why are you doing this? This is bad to do. You're going against God. Oh, it was a priest. It was a priest that he was arguing with. So it really, the radio drama really focused on the depths of, going against Christianity and or God, because in the books they don't or in the book they don't go against Christianity. They actually say that he's just found another way to create life other than Marvin Gaye. So it was cool because it was more of a debate, and then it just had like a little action at the end. But it was more about this discussion of the relevance of going against God and creating man or creating life without the help of a God is a dangerous thing to do, and the repercussions of that.
Awesome. Sorry, I was going through pain through a little bit of that, but I got the gist.
Right.
All right. How about Flesh for Frankenstein? See that on here.
Flesh for Frankenstein. That one was that's the Udo Kier, the Andy Warhol film. I had never actually seen this one before the study. Most of the other ones I had seen, I was just refreshing. But this one I had never seen. My favorite is there's these lines in this fucking movie that are just like, they stay with you. Like, you've got to fuck life in the gallbladder. Like, that'll be with me forever. And he's with two women. He must be very powerful, which Jared and I have become obsessed with. I think we constantly that it's actually funny because Rocky Horror Picture Show, I think, really took from this movie, so far as set design is concerned, because I think they even had the red kind of encasing and the white bandages when they created the creature, which of course the creature in this one was not a monster. Well, I mean, he really, I mean, well, it gets bad, but he doesn't look like a monster. And I want to say that somebody has sex with somebody's armpit in that movie, which is another. I want to say I saw that.
It's either the movie or a great dream you had.
No, it was. I mean, he's like licking her armpit. I mean,
it's an art film.
Yeah, Andy Warhol. I wouldn't. I mean, it's amazing for what it is, and the things, the boundaries that he crossed. Because I'm all about crossing boundaries. We have a happy dance. We have a comment.
We have
All right, we'll
several.
All right. Oh,
So you
okay.
wrap-
All right, we're
wrap
gonna
it up. You let me
let me wrap this one up.
Armpit.
It's definitely. I mean, it's good to know, to see what everybody else did and how far they went with it. Of course, everything with Andy Warhol is very sexual, and I am definitely going to have a strong sexual tone to my film, just because all these books kind of dabble in it in their own way. But yeah, so that was an interesting one. Flesh for Frankenstein. If you want to just get your mind blown and possibly blown by a Frankenstein's monster,
I'm downloading it now.
this is the one to watch.
Yeah.
But all right, what's our first live comment?
Okay, we have Tommy Jarvis. If Frankenstein's monster gets bitten by a vampire, a werewolf, and a zombie in the same night, what kind of fucked up hybrid would he become?
Well, all right. I actually, Jared, a buddy of mine, is a kind of a historian, and he will ask me questions very similar to this, just because I think he's late at night and he just, he likes pondering.
Oh yeah.
So one, Frankenstein is kind of undead, but his heart still beats. So I think if he's bit by a vampire, nothing would happen because his flesh is already kind of dead and kind of in this immortal way where, like, even though the book doesn't state that he's immortal, it does state that he, like, cold doesn't bother him. Like, he's not circulating the way that a human does.
Well, I guess that would actually have to come down to sustenance, right? I mean, does the Frankenstein monster eat like a normal person to survive?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a digestive system, which a lot of, depending on what kind of vampirism you want to go with that, it really afflicts the way you survive through sustenance, which all the vampirism does is exchange food for human blood.
Well, it's also a disease. It's a transfer of venom that, I mean, so far as turning you into one,
yeah.
It's a transfer of the bite.
Right. So I guess
at least modern vampire. If you go back pre-Dracula, it's unsettled graves. It's kind of like they're just really pissed off ghosts. Right. But so far as what we're thinking about, I think if Frankenstein is bitten by a werewolf or vampire, the venom or curse would not carry over to him, or even zombie, because I just think his blood circulation is not quite up to speed like the rest of us. And plus, whatever he is outside of, because they never talk about him getting sick. Or
I was getting ready to say, so by that rationale, he would not get the common cold.
Exactly. I mean, he's walking in the Arctic, like he doesn't need clothing.
So, ladies, Frankie would be HIV free.
This is Royce.
It's fact.
Next question.
Okay, Tommy Jarvis again. If Frankenstein's monster ever got bit by a zombie, would it become a zombie?
Well,
It is already.
he cut. Well, except his heart's beating.
Yeah.
He. I mean, yeah, he's definitely undead so far as that definition is concerned. But like the Ramiro flesh eater zombie bites you, you become one. I think it's the same thing. I think the disease would not travel, but he could be affected in some way. But I don't think it would work the way it does on us.
Yeah. Once again, I think it's a nourishment thing.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be for food.
Yeah. Are we caught up with?
Nope, we got another one from Chess Club Romeos, which is Rick Germain. That's his band.
Oh, hey.
Yep. You know that's not a bone, right?
Is there?
I'm not sure.
Can you clarify that a little bit?
Follow up that one if you could, Rick.
Yeah, we're lost.
Sorry, we'll all be tiptoeing to our cars tonight just to make sure there's no bones laying anywhere.
Okay. Got another one?
Let's do another movie and then we'll come back to more of those.
Good.
What's
well, this isn't on your list, but it made me think of one that I was very familiar with in the 90s. It was 1990 and on. It's very popular on Cinemax. Frankenhooker. Do you remember that one?
No, I'm well aware of Frankenhooker. I've even been requested to review Frankenhooker. That's a trauma film, right? That's
sure.
It's I think it's one, or it's a,
yeah.
Yes, I'm well aware of Frankenhooker. I didn't think that it pertained to the novel that much, so I didn't go down that road. However, when I get to my bride studies, I might go down it. I might take that path because I definitely, in my bride studies, am going to be doing Bride of the Reanimator, which is the closest. Like Reanimator was the H.P. Lovecraft story, but Bride of the Reanimator really went the Frankenstein way. And so I will definitely be doing that in there. So if I bring that in, I might have to bring Frankenhooker in too, unless I find 10 other films that are more on key than that.
Jesus.
All right, so another movie that I did research.
2.5 million. All right.
What's 2.5?
Frankenhooker.
That's how much the budget was?
It says budget 2.5 million.
That drugs are expensive, right?
That
would be there you go.
All right. Now what you actually watch.
Right.
I think you mentioned Ghost earlier.
Yeah, Ghost of Frankenstein we went over.
The Frankenstein Theory.
Oh, okay. This was a film that was kind of on the B movie level, but is very, very new. It's a sequel kind of to the novel, as a found footage film of a group of guys who think the Frankenstein monster is real, and they go out to the Arctic to find it. And of course, they find it, and terrible things.
Yeah, I think we watched
terrible things.
We watched.
Did we watch it?
Yeah, we watched it.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
So
yeah, that was in my research. I definitely took that one in, and it was cool for what it was. I mean, I'm a little played out on found footage right now, but I think in like 5-6 years, I could watch another found footage movie again and be like, oh, okay, I remember that. It's kind of just like really hitting you hard. It'd be like if everybody was making black and white movies again, because of just the artistic value of making black and white movies. Eventually you want to see color again. And this is kind of that. Like there's just so many of them. It's not really played. It's played out to me, but obviously not to the masses because they do like the found footage movie. And they're more inexpensive to make. But I think eventually I just need some time, just a little bit of, I'm not going to break up with them. I'm not going to leave them. I'm just have them collect their shit and go stay in a hotel for a little while. And then maybe after a couple dinners and some drunk makeup sex, we'll get back together. But right now, no. I need a little time from found footage.
You just gave him the friendship ring.
It's just one of the lollipops. All right, new question.
Okay, this is the latest one, then we'll go back to the one before.
Okay.
Winston Smith says, dang it, I forgot there were such things as time zones. Curse you, Central, for being an hour behind. What kind of questions are you wanting to talk about?
Oh, well, welcome.
Question for questions.
We're talking about Frankenstein's monster, or the Frankenstein books, or anything affiliated with Frankenstein. You can ask about other monsters as well, but the end of the research that I am doing is really on the Frankenstein monster. So anything that has to do with Frankenstein theories, questions, ideas, comments, anything like that, bring them on. We'd love to hear them.
Okay, and this one is from that one Taco Bell guy.
I know him.
How would you have the monster been different if Fritz had grabbed the healthy brain?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is concerning with the 1931 version of Frankenstein. The upside to the abnormal brain is really in Bride. Most people forget that in Bride of Frankenstein, he actually starts talking and he learns how to speak and communicate. In the first film, I don't think they wanted the monster to be that intelligent because eventually they wanted to kill it. And they wanted to be a monster versus too sympathetic. Even though they gave it some moments, but they cut him out. Like I think when he threw the girl in the water, they removed that from the film. So I think that was the reason for it. And if they gave it a regular brain, it would be similar to the novel. where, you know, I mean, both characters, Victor Frankenstein and the monster, obviously they're both villains and they're both heroes. They're both heroes of their own story, but you would not want to like piss off either one of these people in a room where they have access to weapons. So they're both pretty nasty on their own, but at the same time, they're heroes of their own story, and you can kind of relate to both of them on very different levels. I think at the end of the day, if I had to choose one that I relate to personally, it would be Victor, just because I create and I love to create, and I understand the long hours and the passion that drives you to almost madness of just trying to make your creation. And I don't have a lot of connection to abandonment and rage of parental guidance, but I know many people do. So it just really kind of falls to like you could go either way. It all depends on, you know, kind of your past and what speaks to you. So I would definitely say that if he gave him the normal brain, the film would have been much longer, and it would have been a little bit more of the novel versus just making him a straightforward monster.
Hey, Rick has chimed in again.
Okay.
I can. You were
The bone.
referring to what? Yeah, the bone. Referring to Mr. Hyde's bone growing when talking about the penis size. So.
Oh, I forgot we talked about Monster Dick.
Yeah,
All right.
from the Peanut Gallery, which we'll go to now. Yeah, I guess it's possible that his bone would be bulky, but in the novel he changes his bone structure changes, but I don't think he turns into quite like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Incredible Hulk size. All right.
I'm still going with the theory of juicing. Shit shrinks while he gets bigger.
So from the Peanut Gallery, we have Matthew Ewald with, out of all of your research into Frankenstein legacy, both film and literature, which version of the monster inspired you the most? As in, which version did you enjoy the most? This is just obviously focused on the monster. I liked Ghost of Frankenstein was probably my favorite movie, but not for the monster. It was for all the characters surrounding the monster. So far as the monster is concerned, I really liked, well, actually, it's a movie I haven't done yet, but there's a movie called The Bride that Sting is in, and I think it's Jessica Biel, not Jessica Biel. I can't remember the girl's name, but Sting plays Victor Frankenstein, and Clancy Brown plays the monster. And I really liked that because he was scary, and he was one of the first monsters to me that was scary. I've always kind of been Frankenstein's monster has never really been my favorite because he's sympathetic. He wasn't a monster to me. He was just misunderstood. Then he turns pretty fucking villainous, but before that, he's very misunderstood, and that's usually what they focused on.
It was Jennifer Beals.
It was Jennifer Beals. Okay, great. I'm not too old yet. But Clancy Brown's version of the monster he was a monster, and he was definitely coming off Highlander and all that kind of stuff. So he was already really into being nasty. And Pet Sematary 2, another one, which he almost kind of was Frankenstein's monster all over again. He was definitely a zombie in the nature of Reanimated, but not a flesh-eating Ramiro zombie. So I would say Clancy Brown has still influenced me the most so far as the monster is concerned. Now, I don't think that will be the monster that I do, but I think it's definitely going to be a hybrid of a lot of them. So that's from the Peanut Gallery. Are we caught up with YouTube?
We've got a question.
Oh, we got a question.
Winston Smith. I apologize, you might have answered this already, but what's your favorite look for Frankenstein? Traditional, or are you going to bring your own style into it?
Definitely not. I love the traditional look. I won't be going traditional myself. I will be based more on the book and the design of the book. The only one that I haven't figured, because in the novel Dracula, he actually has a white mustache and like white hair. I don't know if I'll be doing that per se, or I might do something. I might figure it all out. But the monster, we're gonna make our own look, which is gonna be really nerve-wracking for Mariah, that she has to recreate all of these famous iconic creatures that she's gonna be judged so hardly on. But yeah, so yeah, we're definitely gonna go with a new look that's gonna be a little bit more maybe monstrous than you would originally think. All right, what's another movie?
All right. Well, on here you have the 31 and the 1910.
1910, the 31 we talked about, and then the 1910 was the Thomas Edison version of Frankenstein, which was definitely a hybrid of Jekyll and Hyde. It was almost like Victor and Frankenstein were kind of the same person. Where if you watch the movie, you never see them, like the two of them and another person together. It's either they only see each other. The most interesting thing about this movie to me than all the other ones is in the novel, they never explain how the monster's created. They say that after his hard work and toils, and it was a night in November or something like that. I don't know the exact wording, but you don't know exactly what he did to make the monster. So everyone kind of based it that Mary Shelley had seen that doctor in London who was electrocuting corpses, and you seeing them kind of shake and their eyes would open, and so which eventually would lead to us using a defibrillator to bring people back from the dead. But so everyone kind of thought electricity, but in the novel, it never really says what it was that brought him back to life. So in the 1910 version, it was a concoction of potions and fire, that the monster came from fire, which was very, very different. And I've never seen it done like that again. Most because of the Universal films, everybody goes lightning, even though it doesn't. It says there's a storm going, but it doesn't say the lightning was used to create the monster. So that's probably something I will be steering away from, that it's not the use of lightning to bring something back. But I don't know if I'm going to go with fire or something else, but it won't be that. So that's what I really took away from that part.
All right. Well, that's
Is that all the movies?
That's pretty much all the movies.
So let's talk about the additionals.
All righty. Well, most of these are documentaries. Before I start listing anything, is there a specific documentary that you've watched in your studies that really jumps out, stands out in your mind as far as being very in depth and that really grabbed you?
Well, most of the documentaries that I watched were more focused on Mary Shelley and her upbringing and life, as well as the science of Frankenstein and the novel affecting other people with their science, like the defibrillator. If it wasn't for the Frankenstein novel, the defibrillator might not have ever came to be, which is awesome. Like that, science, because Frankenstein is horror, but it is a lot more science fiction than it is horror. Probably one of the first real good science fiction horror novels hybrids ever. So a lot of the documentaries were about that and how science is looked at as a monster until we understand it. And so there was a lot of that, of the talk of a god and the way they create and the way science creates, and how it's feared and hated immediately when something new comes up, until we know of it as commonplace. So the documentaries were cool for that. And of course, Mary Shelley had a horrible, horrible life.
Right.
Everyone around her died, and it is very sad, and it's disheartening. But she at 19 wrote one of the greatest novels of all time. So I guess that's kind of the sacrifice. That's why my movies aren't great, because if they were great, then terrible things would happen to me. And I just have mediocre horrible that happens to me. So my films are just kind of just a little bit above mediocre. And I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that. If you make one great one and then, Godzilla eats your penis, it just seems awful and a terrible thing to happen. Do we have another question?
We just have a last comment from last time from Stephen J. Phillips. Cool. And you still haven't watched House of the Wolfman. I'm interested in your opinion. I liked it, but more for the sake of nostalgia than anything. It really put forth the effort in terms of paying homage. Yeah,
House of the Wolfman, I am going to watch. I think it has Lon Chaney III in that one. When I do the Monster Mashup movies, I am going to do that film. Even though I've never seen it, but I'm aware that none of the monsters really show up till the end of the movie. But I know it is definitely going on the roster, because there are really only the 3 House movies. There's the Universal ones, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and then of course this kind of fan homage film, House of the Wolfman, which came out I think just within the last decade. So and I believe it's black and white and the whole 9 yards. So I'm definitely, it's on the roster, and I will be getting to it when I get to my monster mashups. What's another thing on the additionals?
Well, I know for a fact today you were reading a comic book.
Yes.
Which one was that?
When DC started their new universe over, they picked 52. It's called the New 52. They picked 52 comics and then started them over. One of which was called Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, which I had never heard of before that. Apparently, Frankenstein is one of their superheroes in the series, and it's really interesting because I was reading the comic to hear Frankenstein's monster talking about Superman. Like, you just never would think of connecting those two characters, but in the DC universe they are. And now it ended up being more of a monster mashup because I wasn't aware of the comic, so I didn't know he had a mummy, a werewolf, a gill woman, and a vampire that were all on his team as I think they were called the creature commandos. It was interesting because these creatures get together and they're fighting for good now, and they go to like kind of an H.P. Lovecraft world of monsters, and they kill an entire planet, which was they were really going for the gold right off the bat. And it definitely seemed like this version of Frankenstein was kind of a competitor for the Incredible Hulk, especially World War Hulk, where he has the sword. Like, you could see the influences between the two. But it was cool to see, like, because this was one of the rare ones that actually dealt with what Frankenstein would be like now, after 100 years or 200 years of his creation. So that was cool.
And it's actually educational to me because I had no idea.
Yeah, it was. In my research, I find all kinds of stuff.
Awesome. All right. We got a couple games here. What is Frankenstein Through the Eyes of the Monster?
Frankenstein Through the Eyes of the Monster was a PC game where Tim Curry played the Victor Frankenstein. It was a retelling of the novel with many more characters and an adjustment where you actually play as the monster, and of course you're very sympathetic. And I believe one of your arms is a female arm. like he's really he's a monster. It was interesting to see the take on it. I love Tim Curry, so to see Tim Curry playing the Doctor was cool. But that was it was a PC game, kind of an older game, which I actually owned from years ago. I think I found it at Rose's for like $4, and I was like, oh, it's Tim Curry, I gotta have this. And so I was returning to that, and I've actually taken the audio clips of it and turned them into MP3s, and I put them on my playlist, so I have them with me to kind of remind me of the Frankenstein monster.
Nice.
Do we have any other comments at the moment? No comments.
No comments.
So what's another additional that I looked over?
All right, well, let's talk about Frankenstein 2004.
Oh,
which one is that?
This was Dean Koontz started a book series. This was an additional movie. I wasn't supposed to do an additional movie, but this seemed to be, I had never really heard of it, Dean Koontz novels. And so I wanted to, I saw that one of them had been turned into a film. And so I just did the film version because I've heard the novels start off good but end very, very bad out of the 5 books, where his monster is the hero and Victor Frankenstein is kind of Victor Frankenstein is immortal, and he's making all these kind of creatures, and his goal is to turn everybody into his creatures. Like, he's able to make like clones of people, and he's trying to clone the whole world, but then they kill him. But in the last 2 books, he had a clone of himself that wants to clone the whole world and then kill everything on the planet once he it gets really complicated and strange, but it kind of made the monster a hero. And so I was curious about that. And of course, watching the movie and seeing Michael Madsen give birth was something I wasn't expecting to see. But cool idea, cool for where it was going. But it was just something that it was so you know, Dean Koontz is kind of a part of the horror genre so much. I wanted to see what he did with it before I took any steps in that path.
Well, I'm going straight to Redbox. All right. Well, I know the last time I visited, we watched one, the Monster Brawl.
Not on that yet.
Not on that yet.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to watch Monster Brawl until I got to the Monster Mashup, but I wanted to show it to Roy, so we watched it just a little early. But I'll be readjusting that when we get to the Monster Mashup.
Yeah, but I know Frankenstein was sorry.
Look at the list.
I was not informed.
Look at the list.
Jumping
But
ahead.
this we've done. Okay. How about a documentary of Frankenstein's monsters, plural?
Oh, I think I covered that. That was talking about Frankenstein's monsters. The documentary, I believe, was about like science. Like the atom bomb was kind of like Frankenstein's monster. It was kind of comparing everything to the fear of science until you understand it.
Oh, okay.
Do we have another? All right.
How about Tales of Frankenstein? It says it's a short.
Tales of Frankenstein. I watched a lot of web videos to kind of see what the cyber world was doing with the creatures as well. I can't remember.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, no. Tales of Frankenstein. The short was the 50s. It was a Tales from the Crypt show, and the first episode was a retelling of the Frankenstein story in the 50s. It was very much like the Hammer films, but in black and white.
Mm. So
So they were trying to look like the classic look, but it was very much like the Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee film, which I also Curse of Frankenstein, which I think was in my 10. I think so.
Curse of Frankenstein. Yes, it's right there.
Yeah, I had to do one Hammer film. I actually watched James Rolfe's reviews of the other ones. I'm gonna watch Frankenstein Made Woman, I think, when I do Bride, but otherwise I just kind of I'm well aware of the whole series and I've seen them all, and so I didn't go down that road because then I would only be watching Hammer films. But I did take in the first one again, just to kind of, you know, to see what they did with it, because they were the first to kind of reinvent the monster from the Universal. Anything on your end?
Nothing.
I think we're getting close to the end too.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed on the list. I mean, if we want to delve into this, I mean, there's of course, the more popular in culture of like the 1992 version. And
Oh yeah,
that.
with Kenneth Branagh.
Mhm.
Kenneth Branagh I'll be dealing with when I go to Bride, just because it does actually deal with the bride a little bit more. So before she's resurrected. We do have one more from the Peanut Gallery. This is Jimmy Belcher, who's an audiophile.
Yeah, I got a question. Who killed Tommy's boy?
This is referring to an album from, I believe, 1996 called The Gravediggers, where that leads into a song called Suicide, which I'm a big fan of and know a lot of the lyrics of. And Jimmy and I grew up on this song. So that is his question for those who have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
So who did kill Tommy?
You never know. He fires the gun and then the song starts. He's just very upset about it. Probably the Gravediggers, because they're the ones in.
So Robert Stack never solved that.
No.
Okay.
That definitely stayed unsolved. Is there anything else on the additionals list that we didn't cover? I know we went through on all the documentaries and.
There's Danny Boyle's Frankenstein.
Oh, sure. The play. The new play that it was a National London Theatre Group. I can't remember. I could be saying that wrong, but this was the play that the Cumberbatch, Cabbage Patch, and Sick Boy, which I'm totally screwing all this up, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But these two guys played the monster and Victor, and they would actually switch roles on. So every time you see it, you might see it with a different actor playing it. They would just switch the roles around to kind of reiterate that they are the one and the same. They're just different. The play does stay very close to the novel, very close. Just dealing a little bit more with the emotion of the monster. It's definitely focused more on the monster than it is Victor. But I like the design of the sets that they did. I've never seen a play where it rains and like literally raining, and that was really cool. And obviously, it's a play that can only be performed in that house because you can't go to your local theater and try it. It just might. It's like there's fire and rain, and it's a big thing. But that was I'm really glad I got to see that because they were really going in depth with the emotions of the characters that most of the movies do not. I mean, even to the point where they, the monster, they gave it a speech impediment, both of them when they play it, and how he, starts off as a child, like they literally have him acting like a 2-year-old discovering life because he does it all on his own after being abandoned by Victor, is where the play starts. And it was cool to see that and see the interactions, and then and of course the acting was phenomenal. Those two guys are fantastic. Even all the secondary characters were awesome, and the show use of dance was cool. So far as like all the men who made up the train, and the envision of love that the monster has and wants to actually have that is a big focus. And I'm actually very focused on that aspect in my version, where he does want a female still because he's a lonely creature. But my version of him is going about it all wrong. But that's kind of where he's coming from. But no, it was a great play, and Cabbage Patch and Sick Boy were Johnny Lee Miller, who's actually been in a lot of good movies, and it's Sherlock Holmes.
I know. I'm like.
And then, how do you pronounce the other guys?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict, which is the egg sandwich, right? Or like the
Eggs Benedict.
Eggs Benedict. Yeah. Cabbage Patch. Cumberbatch. Very good actor. Love his work. I'm just awful with names, especially when they remind me of eggs and dolls.
Well, I have something.
Okay.
What about the Showtime series that we're watching with Frankenstein?
Oh, Penny Dreadful.
Penny Dreadful.
I adore Penny Dreadful for what it is. It is a monster mashup, so I wanted to wait, but it was so intriguing, I just stuck with it. And of course, they address everything. They don't say Dracula, but it's Mina, so fuck it, it's Dracula. And then they did the Wolfman. They kind of got into the Mummy in a weird way, where like the vampires had Egyptian writing on them, so they're like kind of connecting it. And then Frankenstein's monster really being a vicious motherfucker. It was a great series, and I'm really excited for the second season. It's one of those things that are just inspiring. And it's funny because shows like that, and now Universal relaunching all these movies at the same time as I decided to do this damn thing, is good because it's bringing more attention to the monsters and everybody gets to see their own slice. I might end up being the Snakes on a Train version, like so everybody sees the one in the theater, and then they're like, oh, this is the one in the red box. But hopefully my version will be different enough and not a throwaway film, which a lot of the Snakes on a Train films are. They're just using the title and a poster, and they don't really care what the movie's about. Obviously, as you could tell by me doing this, I'm very much in love with the idea and the characters and the history of everything that I'm doing, and I really want to bring that across for you.
Darkstone cares, so you don't have to.
Yeah, we do this research so you don't have to, even though it's a lot of fun. You really should do it.
We have questions.
We have a question.
Henry Ty, can the monster ever get a hard on?
Well, yes, actually, they do go over that in the novel, because they're one of the reasons why because the bride is never created in the actual novel. And the bride is not created because he's afraid of them mating and making more of these creatures and what those things would even be. So that being said, obviously he is biologically working everywhere because they're afraid of the, because he never makes the bride, he destroys the body before, which causes Victor to kill his wife, or causing the monster to kill Victor's wife, because he doesn't resurrect the body. Which so yeah, to answer your question in a long about way, his dick works.
Yeah, in Young Frankenstein, they show that. They prove that.
Well, that's comedy. Like I think
But
he's
still.
talking about. Yeah.
But still.
And it's supposed to be like woof, and it makes you sing opera.
Yeah.
And we have another question from Winston Smith. You talked earlier about how you enjoyed when Frankenstein's monster was indeed a monster. Is yours going to be just evil, or are you going to justify why he's evil?
Both. There is a justifiable reason for why he's the way he is, but he is so far gone, there's no going back. He's not going to look at Luke and throw the Emperor into a tunnel. He literally will just slice Luke in half. Like, he's going to be to the point where there's no going back, but there is a reason why he is the way he is, and why he got to the way he is. So, yeah. Depth of character. One of my favorites was Darkness from Legend, where he was doing all these awful and terrible things. He wanted to drink the blood of unicorns, but he also wanted to be in love and was lonely. So, like, you kind of felt for him, but at the same time, what? And that's kind of the way I'm going. I really love the way Darkness was so awful and what he wanted to do and destroy all the light. And, you know, he had reasons. He had reasons for it all. And so it was cool. And I think we covered it. Is there anything left?
Other than video games, but...
what video games were left?
Oh, of course, there's the Sega CD, Mary Shelley's. There's...
Okay, so the basic player, less story to them and more playable games. I think there was... I did one really kind of like a computer game, like a really old computer game of Frankenstein, I think. But yeah, those things were just to see the visuals that people were using and that they were affiliating with the monster and Victor. So it's kind of to see what everybody else went with it. The games themselves can be reviewed, and I'm sure James can take care of that for you. If you just go to the Angry Video Game Nerd site, you'll see all that. I was more looking at them as for visual aesthetic and what ideas were being thrown out with the monster.
Yeah, because for really on those things on their face, they're just marketing.
Yeah.
Promotion for the film.
Okay, we've got a question from Steve-O the Devo. Do you consider Frank's monster an anti-hero? And what are your views of the monster speaking in Bride of Frankenstein?
Love the fact that he speaks in Bride of Frankenstein, just being closer to the monster or closer to the book, and also connecting that to you can actually understand where he's coming from more, because he was a simpleton in the first film where he was literally like just walking and touching things and trying to understand as like a child would, where in this one he's more of an adolescent where he knows what he wants and he feels more emotional on higher levels, and you couldn't really communicate that as well with without a voice. And so when they gave him a voice, it was fantastic. But of course everything gets crushed and he goes back to being a mute again in the later films. But that was a really cool idea. I actually haven't watched it in my research, but I'm of course very well aware of it. What was the first part of his question?
Oh, I just closed it. I have to keep refreshing it.
The first part of his was oh man,
Wow.
it was.
Wait 1 second.
Hang on, we'll get to the first part here.
I'm still looking at Frankenstein porn. Do not ask me.
All right, so we covered everything on the list so far as the additionals in the films.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few stray documentaries if you want to discuss them.
No, I think I kind of get
because I mean
they all kind of they're all going over the same stuff. Oh, and then I also watched all of James' reviews of the games and his take on stuff, which is always fun.
When I load it, oh, here it is. Do you consider Frank's monster an anti-hero?
Oh, anti-hero. It depends on which version I mean, obviously, Dean Koontz novel, he was an anti-hero. In Shade, he was an anti-hero, where he's angry, but he's still doing the right thing because of it. So far as the novel's concerned, I don't think he's an anti-hero. I think he's actually a villain. I think they're both villains. They're both doing terrible things for terrible reasons. And then they're also kind of good at the same time, but I wouldn't say anti-hero. But I think there are a lot of people, you could take the monster and very easily make him an anti-hero in an additional story where he's on some form of redemption for all the wrongs that he did in the book. But I would not think of him in generalization as an anti-hero. I think he's definitely, well, he's what I want him to be is the monster. And so that's what I've learned from watching all of this is that you know, like Monster Squad and stuff like that really looked at him as very sympathetic. I'm going the polar opposite of that, and he might be truly the worst of all the monsters in House of Horrors. All right, well that's wrapping up our show. I'd like to thank. Oh wait,
we just got somebody.
We got one more.
Okay, Mark Gill. Can the creature ever learn emotions?
That was sure. Yeah, he does that pretty early on. Even as the simpleton in the movies, he's figuring out emotions. Pain and heartbreak is what causes him to react in violence constantly, and to make a problem for everybody. Is literally that that pain he's reacting to is what made him a monster in most of the stuff. I believe the line is pain is what caused me to be a fiend, or to create me as a fiend. I believe that's how he justifies it in the novel. I believe that's the line. It's pain or heartbreak caused me to be a fiend, which I will actually be putting into my film somewhere, because that line defines it. It justifies what he's doing, but at the same time he's doing really terrible things because he is a fiend. But I'm very excited to do this with you guys. I love being a part of this and being in a position where I can actually. We got one more.
This one's really good.
It's a really good one.
Yeah,
okay.
That one Taco Bell guy said if you could reanimate cast Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., and cast them in one of your films, who would you choose?
Oh, if I can only choose one of the three? Because Lon Chaney Jr. is so great because of the sympathetic and the sweet man that he plays. Bela Lugosi is just creepy, and Boris Karloff is just this icon who's played pretty much everything. Oh man, I would do Bela Lugosi. I think Bela Lugosi, not as Dracula. I actually don't prefer him as Dracula, but his version of Igor and the Devil Bat, where he was really creepy. I think I would definitely go with that. Plus, I'm just a tiny bit attached to Plan 9. So it just seems that I would go with Bela because of that. But I would never turn down Boris Karloff or Lon Chaney Jr. And I think the first thing I would do is whoever presented this magic in front of me that could resurrect one of these three people, I would kill that man, resurrect him, and then he would be my choice, and then ask him to ask me that question again, and then maybe he'd let me have all three. Because those are just iconic, and it would be amazing to see those guys, the older versions more, to see those guys just, chewing up the scenery. I mean, that is a great question. It was a great question. All right, so now we're done with this one. I am going to be doing the next monster is Creature from the Black Lagoon, which obviously in my film can't be Creature from the Black Lagoon, but it'll be something similar. But we're going to be doing a study on all that. We'll have a couple of these little videos to go through, and then we'll have the one big one at the end like this, where I'll have a guest. Thank you, Royce.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, come over here. Come say hi to everybody.
There you go.
This is Alyssa.
Hey!
She's been helping us answering your questions and getting everything together. And we're actually at Meow Meow Studios. We're actually in her basement. This is the Elemental set behind me with a little piece of some Skeleton Key 3-part 2. But yeah. Yeah. So thank you guys so much. You can this will be posted on the website. You guys will be able to watch this and kind of catch up and get a feel for what we're doing. The smaller videos won't get posted on the website. We're only going to do the big one once I've completed my studies. But now I'm going to be doing a creature schedule. If you go to my Facebook, you will see a note that's called House of Horrors Research, which will give a schedule to what I'm doing, like when we air these and when I'm watching the movies. And maybe you guys can watch the movies along with me, and we can talk about it on Facebook before we do one of these. So thank you guys. Thanks to everybody, and we will see you on the next one. Da, 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 da.